Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Rainer Dedel. Hello.
Hello, everybody. Hi.
I switch off my micro and my.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. I think it's 3 past 3. We are more than 28 people in the call. So I would rather start, if you agree all with me, because probably other people might join us during the webinar as well. So just some technical announcement in the first place. Please keep your mics off because we need to make sure there are not any type of disturbance during the time that our speakers will tell us about the sector, and also try to make sure that if you need to ask any questions, please do it within the chat as well. We will try to answer as many as possible. If we don't manage, please don't be angry. We will send, back information also in writing. So don't worry for that. And also another important task, if you don't like to be recorded, be aware that this will be a recorded webinar. So switch off your video if you don't like to show your face. Okay, so these were the technical announcements that I am always supposed to do in advance. So I ask my valuable colleagues, Nicolas and Ellie, in the background that help us thoroughly to prepare this webinar to start the recording that already I think it started since 22 minutes. So it's also important, but it's important that you are aware. Very important for today, also we have four fantastic speakers. We will talk about the future of reusable medical textiles, and this webinar has been possible also thanks to the help of Miguel, Pablo from CHAINGE Group, that will also do a little introduction shortly. So that is an important support, valuable support. But we hope that after this webinar, we will all be more interested in talking more about the sectors, but in doing also more about this sector. Today in Brussels, we are discussing the energy crisis. We all know there are a lot of increase in costs of inflation and in the cost of the energy. But the European Commission is asking us to be more and more digital and more sustainable. And we can definitely say that the reusable medical textiles are responding effectively to these challenges today. And the speakers will bring their perspective on that. With data, with information, but also with possibilities for you to join forces more in the future. Um, I would like to pass the floor in the first place to our first speaker, Miguel from CHAINGE Group. Miguel, you are an expert. Really, you have been in the sector for quite a while, and you have been expertise in the sector that goes from Germany to Mexico. So you have seen different realities, really. And now you are in Europe, and you have to really try to take the best out of the policies that our institutions at governmental level and at national level and European level are doing for this sector, but also to make sure that the industry is lucrative, is profitable. So an interesting balance to keep. Miguel, would you like to give us a little intro on the importance of this sector today?
Yes, thank you very much, Elena, for the nice words, for the nice introduction. Also, thank you very much, Nelly and Nico, for organizing this webinar. So I'm Miguel Pablo. I'm the chairman of CHAINGE and board member of the SUS Medical Group, including Eurotape. Maybe most of you know Eurotape better than SMG, SUS Medical Group. Good afternoon to all attendees. Thank you very much for being here and for your interest. Next slide, please. So CHAINGE, of course, are the members, and these are the members for the time being in CHAINGE. You see, we are 14 companies of 7 countries in Europe, and we are becoming more and more because the interest is increasing in this topic. Next slide, please. CHAINGE is a European association founded in the Netherlands, representing the reusable OR textile and isolation gowns industry, being the specialized group inside the ETSA for the very special part of the textile service industry and being also part of the medical device industry. Next slide, please. The superiority of our reusable system over the disposable is evident and proved in many studies. Next slide, please. So the ATA, the American Reusable Textile Association made one. We at CHAINGE made another one. Next slide, please. And also the latest study published now by Elise showing favorable results for our reusable system. And Roberta will tell us more in detail about this and other things. Yeah, next slide, please. Here only a brief example. In each OR, operation theater, operation room, 2 tons of disposable waste are produced per year. Knowing that 240,000 ORs exist in the European community. Yeah. Next slide, please. Then we can see we can avoid more than 42,000 tons of waste by using reusable OR textiles. 40,000 tons is more or less the double as Luxembourg produce in a year. So knowing that most of the disposable packs are produced in the Far East, in Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, you name it, countries where labor conditions are not controlled and human rights does not exist. If we put it in a nutshell, yeah, for our politicians, we can say the equation is using disposable gowns and drapes is exporting labor and importing waste, as easy as it is. Yeah. Next slide, please. So our reusable system is the solution: reuse, reprocess, recycle. And now we have new processes developed which allow us to convert gowns and drapes after their life cycle into granulate. With this granulate, we can produce new medical devices, yeah, like kidney bolts for the OR, and other medical devices. And these medical devices have the big advantage that they can be steam sterilized. You know, it can be put in a pack and steam sterilized, which the other polymer medical devices normally have to be sterilized with ETO, yeah, at 52 degrees using toxic gas, which then you have to get rid of this toxic gas. So this we can all avoid by using reusable OR textiles. Next slide, please. And now we have here already the recommendations by the British School of Surgeons, yeah, that saying clearly, please, yeah, switch to reusable textiles in the theater, and so on and so on. Yeah. Later, Marco will also tell you something about activities and initiatives in Italy. Yes. So you will see that this is everything is such upcoming. Yeah. Next slide, please. Now we are coming to the challenge. Yeah. And the challenge is also the opportunity, as always. Yeah. Next slide, please. Imagine that tomorrow you can have a market which is 9 times bigger than the market you have today. Yeah, because 90% of the surgeries are done with disposable. If we convert them into reusable, all of a sudden our market is 9 times bigger and almost nobody is there. So let's go for it. Next slide, please. So what we have to do for this promising future. Next slide, please. As mentioned, of course, we have to increase the visibility and the awareness level by participating in congresses, exhibitions, presentations, educations, you name it. Next slide, please. We have to have okay. We have to be close to our politicians. Remember the equation, yeah, using disposable is exporting labor, importing waste, yeah. And we have to continue to participating in the standardization groups to avoid that developments in the future go in the wrong direction. And Sven will tell you in a few minutes more about this important topic. Yes. Next slide, please. So, unfortunately, in most of the countries, we do not have a market coverage with reprocessing units. That's a fact. Yeah. During the EONA, the European Operation Room Nurse Association in Stavanger, Norway, we were breaking down open doors because the willingness of the OR professionals to change to reusable is tremendous already. Yes. So now and in the future, we must be able to satisfy this upcoming demand. And for that, we need investment in reprocessing facilities. This is fundamental. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Miguel, for this introduction to the sector. I'm pretty sure that the people that are here with us today have a quite good idea of this sector, but you might also have new people that are entering into this sector. They want to understand more, and that is why we decided to speak about that. One first question that I might have for you, Miguel, is what would you think people should do to approach the CHAINGE group? Because you have created this important group with several companies. How easy it is to become a member? Could you share that? Because there you will also dedicate all your attention to the sector. And I think people would like to know if it's possible to be part of it.
Of course, of course. Yes, each company which is somehow participating in this industry is very welcomed in CHAINGE, in our CHAINGE organization. Yeah, the more we are, the better we will be. Yes, so we do have a website, changegroup.eu. There you can find all the information about our association and the history. You can find there the statutes. And of course, you can also find an application format, yeah, if you want. But you can send me anytime a mail under info changegroup.eu, and I can answer all your questions or doubts or whatever you have. So we are very open and hoping that many of the different peers of this industry will join us. Then the more we are, the stronger we are. We have to realize that that we are fighting here against the multinationals, yeah, disposable companies. These are compared to our companies. These are more than giants. Yeah, probably they do have more marketing budget than most of our companies has revenues. Yeah, that's why we have to come together to strengthen ourselves, to put the limited resources together to fight against this big giants.
Thank you, Miguel. I don't see any other question in the chat for the moment, but don't disappear because we will definitely ask some other questions if we have the time. But I think it's interesting if we go through all the presentation first and have an understanding of what is happening. Our next.
Sorry, I believe Elena's connection is cut out, so it's time for me to jump in and welcome our next presenter, Sven Schopp. Sven, the floor is yours, and please begin.
Now, thank you very much, Nick and Elena, for giving me the floor. And actually, I can only echo Miguel's positive approach on medical and surgical textiles. He actually pointed it all out. And actually, I'm already done with all my arguments. My name is Sven Schopp. I'm from Germany. Thank you for the honor of being invited here. And I would like to discuss with you if standardization, which Miguel already pointed out, could be a strategic asset for your industry. And I put the why in brackets because your industry is also our industry, which is my industry. Next, please. And next, please, Nick. Thank you. And when preparing those slides and putting together all the boards and panels and working group I'm active in standardization, I asked myself, did I really dedicate my life to standardization? No, of course not. It's just that I'm in touch with medical textiles and surgical textiles for more than 35 years now, reprocessing them, putting them into packs, delivering them to customers. And maybe I wasn't too quick enough on the trees when people asked me, hey, Sven, could you join standardization? There's some new things going on. And maybe I was just not able to say no. So this ended up with me being active in several German, several European, and also international working groups, boards, and panels that deal with non-active medical devices, or in special with surgical textiles as well. So you see some of my standardization activities there, which I'm doing as a side project next to my other professional activities, which have been designing services for textile service companies that work for hospitals for a long time, and also designing surgical draping and gowning systems. And for my activities with ETSA, we meet here today. Next, please. But much longer than I've been on the scene, medical textiles were and are. And there were some times when there were only reusables. Like the two pictures you see there, the first ones, roughly 1900s and 1955, there actually were no single-use or disposable alternatives. But even where the last picture is in roughly 2006, reusables are still a professional's choice within hospitals. When they have to choose between disposable or reusable decisions. And the funny thing about that is, next please, Nick. The funny thing about that is surgical draping systems are one of the few markets in the world where you have 100% market. It's unlike PPE, where you have the wearer or the non-wearer, but every medical professional makes one decision when he does a surgical procedure. And every surgical procedure in the world, he makes one decision. It's only one. Do I choose reusable products or do I choose disposable products? And when preparing these slides, first I had to make a single-use choice there, but out of traditional feelings, I changed it for a disposable choice. So this is a very interesting market, and combined with what Miguel said, that we have a 90% market chance, we have a 90% market chance in a very safe market because every surgical procedure is draped and gowned, either single use or reusable. We don't have a lot of information on how big the market actually is. Miguel has said something about that. Next, please. We don't have a lot of reliable data. putting the European scale to a worldwide scale, there was an information roughly 10 years ago that we have an estimated 313 million surgical procedures per year worldwide. Of course, this is a pretty uneven distribution because only 6% of these 313 million surgical procedures occur in the poorest countries, but they, of course, make a third of the world's population. So, of course, these surgical procedures concentrate in the so-called Western or civil or industrial countries, where the European market is one of our core markets, which we concentrate on, and where we need numbers for. And as for Europe, that is what I found. Based on available data, we have roughly 30 million surgical procedures. That is an information from the World Health Organization for the European region. And please remember, Miguel told us roughly 90% of those are single-use or disposable, and only 10% is the market share for reusables. In Germany, that I can, because we have deep databases there, and I can tell from a close contact to those statistical information, we record a steady flow of roughly 15 to 70 million surgical procedures per year, but only like 6 to 8 million are those big operations where we know all these draping systems. There's a lot of small surgical procedures that are actually in the hand of single-use products because those are those very quick and small operations. The European market is very vital. It has a yearly rise of approximately 2.5% until a 2030 projection. And because the market is vital, and because it's medical devices, and because we know everything about the European Commission being active in standardization for these products, we have standard activities pending. We will hear more about that in a minute, in Europe and, of course, internationally on an ISO level for the worldwide scale of the use of those medical devices. We've been talking about reusable market shares. They differ significantly in Europe. I think Austria, Switzerland, and especially the UK are doing much better than Germany when it comes to reusable market shares. Roberta will tell us about that in a minute. But we have been in like 50% market share around the year 2000 for Germany, and we are between 10 to 15%, I would think, at the moment. Next, please. So some of you may remember there was a time when single-use and disposable manufacturers thought, hey, wow, reusables, we can actually kick them to the ground. There won't be a bright future for reusables anymore. So those are from my personal archives. Those are my most loved examples of disposable market advertisement I could get my hands on. So like in 2002, we had a company that is, funny enough, not active anymore in especially this area because, Miguel, it became a low margin service for them, so they dropped out of that. Johnson & Johnson once said, you trust someone to ensure it's safe, showing the roller coaster. So who's checking your drapes and gowns, which was a clear attack on reusable products at that time. The next one was, you trust someone who ensures it's reliable with a plane. So who's checking your drapes and gowns? And okay, my favorite is the Mölnlycke thing. What does it say? Do you know where a gown has been before? Showing a qualified laundry there. So that was between 2002 and 2007. Actually, they don't do it anymore. But during those years, they really thought, okay, that was it for reusables. It will be only single-use future and a disposable future because that is much better. Next, please. Thank you. But as we see it today, today's standardization and legislation does not discriminate reusable products anymore, and that has a reason why that is. Today's standardization does not discriminate. It was intended differently by single-use manufacturers. They wanted EN 13795 to become a single-use product standard. That didn't work out because people engage in standardization, which will be on the next slide then, but they once they realized they weren't able to steer that in a disposable direction, they tried it on an international level with ISO 23884, which was actually clearly designed as a single-use standard in the very first time. But when you see those standards today, these standards, as well as the European legislation, they require products to conform with the performance requirement every time that they are used, either one time or multiple times. Those standards, they do recognize that product and process validation is key to conformity to the requirements, and that is where reusables are great in process and product validation. And we do have some German national guidelines and recommendations that exactly mirror this approach with process validation. So with all these standards, you nowadays don't see, you have, as a user, you have the own choice. Do I choose a reusable or do I choose a disposable product? Next, please. But because that happened, that now the reusable manufacturers harvest today what they have planted 25 years ago, when, like in 1996, at the first time standardization became apparent for textile service companies or laundries, experiencing, hey, there is something going on with a medical device directive, with standardization. We have to get in there, elsewhere our market is gone. So I took the analogy of David and Goliath there, like what Miguel said already. They started to step on unknown territory. They started to fight against those giants, those single-use companies who thought, oh, well, we just kick out the reusables in a quick time. But with a lot of courage and a lot of consistency, because that was 25 years ago, and not only me, I was part of that, but some of the participants were part of that when it was in the early times. Through this consistency and the scientific backup they worked on, they were able to show and to prove the performance and capability of reusable products, making single-use or disposable manufacturers aware, hey, we cannot kick them out through standardization. So that was a big achievement, a big step to safeguard the market segment of medical textiles within the textile services. And it may be only a small segment in your overall textile services, but it brings a lot of qualification when it comes to customer communication, because it boosts yourself from a textile service provider to a medical device manufacturer, and you're talking completely on another level with the hospital once you are a medical device manufacturer. So the work we put in there was very much worth it, because we are here today, and we are still here because although some other people didn't want us to be there. Next, please. So that already brings me to some recommendations, what we may have to do, or you have to do for the next 20 years. So looking at me, you may call me a blatant liar, but I won't be doing this for the industry for the next 25 years. So actually, the industry should decide for itself, is standardization an asset, a strategic asset that we would have to safeguard our position, maybe also to enhance our position in standardization. Because nowadays, with Elena's help, with Andreas' help from the DTV, myself and a lot of other people, we are sitting very much like on the lap of the Commission, on the lap of SEN when it comes to standardization. We have a very good feeling of what happens today and in the future, and we have. That's my view. We have to maintain that, but it's your decision. So once. And this only echoes what Miguel said. Once you know what your markets want, once you know what the legislation is up to in the next year, once you know what your real stakes in your services and your market segments are, you are able as an industry to define your mission, your vision, and your strategy. And as said, surgical textiles is only one element in your 360-degree service model that you as textile service companies have. That's a great advantage, that you can combine with sustainability, with circular economy models. You can use climate change that nobody wants, but which is here. You can use that as an argument, just as Miguel said, not importing waste and exporting labor. I like that. But that is a key argument in that. But you have to talk to your customers a lot more than you do. You have to talk about your expertise. You have to position yourself as a problem solver because you are there with your textile services anyways, every day in the hospital. You are able to supply a lot better than the bulk supply of disposable products. But the crucial situation certainly is a lot of the young healthcare workers do not know you anymore because of the market share of only 10%. 90% of the people only know disposable products, and you have to make them aware that there's a reusable solution. And as Miguel said, the nurses and doctors, whatever the professional groups are, they would love reusable solutions. But the purchasers, the purchasing departments, that's a total different call to them about what reusables can do. You would have to accept that it's not a fast business. You have to climb up again. You will have to accept a marathon. It's a long and winding road, as said. And you can only do that as an industry, I think, with a common approach and with combined forces, right? You should look for other people than me. We have Owen here, we have others. You have to look for some young professionals that are willing to dive into standardization, just as the people did in 1996 when getting into the standardization scene, not having known anything about that before, right? And you should get on like every professional group as possible. I chose the term here, the grass grow. I don't know if that's the right one, but it's having your ear very close to the ground, listening to the new developments, and maybe the bad things coming up on the horizon. And if someone recalls my first slide with all my standardization activities, that is just me. And there should be, and there are others, but there need to be even more people making a broad base of standardization so that maybe after me, it's not only Owen doing all this standardization work. You need a broad reusable base so that your competitors know there is a very qualified other side of the table talking about standardization, safeguarding their products, safeguarding their markets. That would be my advice for the next 20 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sven.
You're
And before
welcome.
I was cut, before I was trying to say, I'm going to introduce you to the next speaker that is one of the best experts we know and in the standardization. And I know there are some other experts like Owen is also in the call today. And I know very well this is an important, tough issue we have to deal with in the forthcoming years. I just want to let you know, and all the people that are attending here, that ETSA as well is concerned as an industry that we are missing these experts, and we are ourselves hoping to talk soon with the SEN responsible people to see where we can go with the recruiting of new experts. But of course, speaking to you guys is essential, especially for topic like this one. So thank you very much, Sven, for that. You really pointed a lot of interesting aspects going from the past to the future. And I know that Roberta will go more in details about the study that Ellie has done. But one of the questions that appeared subscribed by our followers, so to say, is that are we doing enough to quantify, okay, with life cycle analysis, with studies, why reusable medical textiles are better than disposable? So they are asking if we are doing enough studies. Is it something that in the standardization you are taking into account, quantifying more, or is it something that you prefer to leave to the big associations like DTV or ETSA and so on? So what do you think, Sven?
The industry might not like my answer, but I think we have a good and broad base of life cycle analysis that can be, of course, enhanced as well. But For every study there is, it needs.
Can I ask to mute the mic of somebody? He's has just opened his mic by mistake. So please, sorry, Sven.
So I think there is a broad basis of life cycle analysis, and like Roberta comes now with a new one, and there will be new information be fed into our industry, our market. But for every of these documents and documentations, you need someone to present it, someone who is willing and able to stand in front of the customer, talking about this, talking about it on a level that the customer understands. You need someone who is not afraid of sweaty arms when talking to people. You need someone to be able and willing to convey the message. That is much more important than every year another life cycle analysis. You need to talk to your market about your expertise, and you need those people willing to talk to the customers.
Thank you, Sven, and also we keep you there hot. Just wait for us because we will get back to you. Let's move to the next presentation. Then Roberta Charlotte, the head of marketing at Ellis. Roberta, thank you for accepting to come and present also, the benefit from an environmental point of view of being engaged and using this important market and sector. So, Roberta, would you like to tell us a little bit what was your perception also, and especially before, with the COVID pandemic, after COVID, things have a little bit changed. We can certainly say that. So thank you, Roberta.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Edson, and everybody and team to invite me here. This is a great honor, simply because everybody that knows me will realize that despite being the head of marketing at Ellis UK, where I look after different divisions, the reusable surgical textile is my passion. It has been since I've been appointed into this industry in 2014, whereas when, back to your point, my MD at the time left on my desk this Monica advert saying, "Where has your gown been processed?" And it was absolutely an eye-opener to see how one of these representatives had actually managed to access one of our laundry, a textile, healthcare textile, as opposed to our one of our two specialized reprocessing facilities. So with this in mind, what I like to do is trying to get you through a little bit example of the UK. What was the situation in terms of pre-COVID, after COVID, and where the emphasis has been for us after looking at implementing our first UK independent LCA studies for a gown, reusable gown versus disposable availabilities. Next slide, please. So this is just to give you a little bit of context around the UK surgical market overview before the COVID. So it was estimated that the market value of surgical textile was around 90 million. During this period, so back, you can say beginning of 2019, 50% of the reusable surgical textile was sold through us into directly the healthcare industry. So that you're aware, within the UK, our major client is the NHS, and then as well as some private hospitals. 48% of disposable surgical were sold directly to the healthcare market via big brand name, and 37% of disposable surgical products. And when I talk about products, it can be a gown, it could be a drapes, it could be a tray wrap, were actually sold via CPTs, customer procedure packs, to the healthcare. So the disposable provider could actually put together a CPT pack supplemented by either a disposable gown or a disposable drape. As Sven, I think, highlighted very well, during the 90s, the single-use sort of medical products were actually being introduced as better quality, quick access to turn around the preparation time during a duration. So if you can imagine your next patient comes in, the operating theatre needs to be moved on and everything is CPT. So the single use became the best and the better. Now, this is a very glance what the market is in terms of disposable provider. To Sven's point, we are dealing here with very big company. The marketing budget was spent so far to discredit everything the reusable surgical textile was trying to achieve. And low point price was actually the strategy as well that was implemented to make sure that our rental service was actually discriminated as well. So next slide, please. So you could see that the disposable provided a sort of a myth in terms of how great and in terms of quality, performance and lint-in capability their product was in comparison to the reusable alternatives. This was allowed by the fact that despite the fact there was a very huge literature already in place, whether it was American studies, Australian studies, that highlighted the importance of how the reusable surgical products actually perform during, test results that Sven has touched upon on the EN 13795. You can see that despite the evidence being there, most of the guidelines decided to refer to reusable surgical textiles simply as being cotton. So there is always like a desire to not take into consideration the fact that the technologies of this fabric has moved across so much and developed so much that for them, the myth of disposable was just to discredit what the fabric composition of a disposable gown, drapes, or even tray wrap was all about. So the misconception is really around the fabric that was taken into account. Next slide, please. Now, the 20th of March 2020 is a key date here in the UK because the pandemic was declared. It was the first UK lockdowns out of 3 that we all lived. Now, it was for everybody an unprecedented time, simply because the elective procedures were suspended. So if you needed an operation, you had to be on the waiting list. Millions of cancer patients were actually placed on waiting list. The focus shifted from surgical to PPE to protect patients and NHS staff from the coronavirus, which at that point in time, but nobody knew much about it. So the global production of PPE increased at least 300% between the end of 2019 and all throughout 2020. During this time, the UK import of PPE rose by 606%. Once the country went through the 3rd lockdown, we managed to come across and some elective surgery, but taken back into being active again. The reality really hit this country. And everybody realized that whatever the government issued in terms of including PPE were actually not fit for purposes. So disposable PPE gowns were imported in this country and not being able to be used. And that, in a way, actually awoke the desire of many procurement people, of many end user, actually to look for a more sustainable and more circular economy approach to PPE as well as reusable textile in the operating theatre. So it was declared that all out of 4 billion of PPE that were not fit for purpose. The majority of these companies, the waste company actually appointed that 15,000 pallets a month were actually burned via method of recycling or burning to generate power. And there is the link for you should you want to read a little bit more about this. So the chief of the chief of the Royal College of Nurses actually said they're sending billions of pounds up in smoke when the NHS and the care services were struggling was absolutely appalling, and so many lives could actually be saved. So at Elite's point of view, we started to see that there was an increase of NHS trust. They were championing the use of reusable PPE during the COVID, and that desire moved from PPE to surgical gowns, reusable surgical gowns. So we started to look at working together to implement what what the best garment were actually fit for purpose and how they should be washed and reprocessed, since their lifespan is actually up to 70 times more than a disposable equivalent. Next slide, please. So if anything good can happen from the pandemic, which is always very difficult to admit, definitely this one, the COVID period, led us to strive for a more sustainable approach. So sustainability now has become the most important topic here in the UK, especially with the NHS ambition target to achieve decarbonizations and a zero health service by 2045. With the operating theatres being considered or estimated to account for a quarter of all hospital waste in the UK, this has become the surgical procedure, and the amount of waste that they generate has become really one of the major subjects that is under the spotlight. In the UK, some research actually showed that a typical surgical operation has a carbon footprint of 173 kilograms for a carbon dioxide equivalent, which that represents like driving from London to Edinburgh, if anybody is familiar with our geography, in a petrol car. So the NHS has been named as one of the most disposable producer of plastic in Europe and generates 133 tons of plastic annually, with only 5% of it being able to be recycled. So as you can see, all of a sudden there is, pardon? All of a sudden, there is a desire of becoming more sustainable, becoming more of a circular provider of a circular economy. So the fact that the literature we face there, listening to our customer, the fact that a lot of literature was produced in the States, was produced in Australia, was actually not good enough for them to see what we could have done, how we could help to give a better example what the UK could do. So the situation has changed. We no longer have to submit or rely on sort of different type of LCA study. Now we can count on our own. Next slide, please. So we decided that we wanted to undertake the first independent UK-based life cycle analysis of reusable surgical gowns. The rationale was actually to look at an independent cradle to end of life assessment that investigated the environmental impact of reusable surgical textile, standard protection and high protection, and in relation to this disposable counterparts here in the UK. This was an independent sort of LCA study because it was commissioned to the Grantham Centre for Sustainable Centre, which is a collaboration between our University of Sheffield and as well as the Grantham Foundation of the Protection of the Environment. So it's nothing that we decided to have control on. We debriefed the University of Sheffield. We've asked them to assist whether all what we thought up to now was actually true. So there was a year, 1 year, 12 months project that they undertook, and we didn't know what the end result will be, but we did have a sneaky suspicion that would become definitely evident that so far all the study conducted could only be reinforced from a sustainable and as well as an economic benefit. So with that in mind, please next slide. The results are in. Thank you. Next slide, please. So, so to just put it in a nutshell, you could see that this is a quantitative study as opposed to a qualitative one. So it's not down to the choice of preference in terms of a gown. This is actually look at the quantitative measurement of 1,000 gowns that were taken into account during the period of 2019, and how, through the moment of purchase and production, all the way through their usage have been actually having an impact on 19 categories. So as you can see here, we've taken immediately what 1, 2, 3, the 5, basically, sorry, the 4 best results in terms of based on 75 usage, the reusable surgical textile high protection gown or standard protection gown brings 84% of saving your carbon footprint. 60% of energy consumption, so a reduction of 66% compared to a disposable version, 60% of water consumption, saving-wise, and up to 84% of solid waste consumptions. Basically, we took into account that if one of our customer were to use 1,000 gowns per week, either from Camberwell, which is our dedicated facility in London that deals only with the processes of reusable textile products, or Shrewsbury, which is situated on the north part of England, each customer per week could actually see a benefit, a cost saving on the average between £3,000 to £7,000 per week on their clinical waste. So next, please. So this is really for me to give you a flavour of what the importance of these studies has been in terms of highlighting in a quantitative manner the results, compare like for like during the cradle to end of life cycle that can be based around a sensitivity analysis of 30, 50 and 75 per gown. We would definitely recommend that the higher the usage it is, the more sustainable the gown actually releases the benefit to the market. So that's me done. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Roberta. It was a very, very comprehensive presentation with a lot of data. So I think we responded to the previous question. Do we quantify enough? Do we do enough studies? I think that this is a very, very good study that can start giving answers to a lot of the question marks on this specific sector. But also I took down some of the key success factors that Owen also mentioned in the chat, because of course when we present a sector, it's also important to understand what is doing positively that other sectors are not doing. So you really listed carbon footprint, energy consumption, water usage, and really almost zero waste. So that these are all crucial answers also that the European institutions are asking us over and over again, to national associations, but also to European associations like ETSA. We have been climate ambassadors since 2021, and we have to come up with really good data. And I think the study that you did with Alice is a very, very good example to move the agenda forward on this sector. So thank you very much, Roberta, for that. One curiosity that you might have mentioned, but I'm not sure. Do you use specific fabric for these gowns and draping? Because maybe Miguel or you have mentioned it and I missed it, but do you use something specific?
Well, in the UK, we have two main type of gowns. We use the high protection and the standard protection. The difference is actually to do with the amount of fluid that might be resulting during a difficult type of operation. So say, for instance, for ENT, which is a ear, nose and throat operation, we would recommend a standard protection gown, which is a 2 pliers. It's a polyester microfiber, 100%. And the benefit of that is that it's lightweight, anti-static, breathable, and non-linting. When it comes to higher exposure to fluid, we definitely recommend high protection. The high protection gown is actually sort of reinforcing the critical areas, so between your sleeves and in the front, whereas the surgeon might be more likely to be exposed to fluid. And the benefit of these high protections is basically it's a 3 ply. So it's polyester, polyethylene, and polyester. So it's the 3 layers for anything to come through, really. And the benefits of using a high protection gown, this particular surgery, is actually to provide a superior barrier. It's an impervious material because you've got the 3 layers element. It's a tear resistant, as you imagine when you're operating with the instruments that are being used. Once again, it's breathable, so nicer for the end user, and also non-linting. So that the non-linting is the particle which is reduced in the atmosphere during the operation, which in the past has always been associated, and is still, you know, if caused, is actually causing infection control risks and increases of.
Okay. Thank you, Roberta, very much. I think we have some other questions in the chat, but we'll move to the next presentation, and then we'll hope to try to answer to some more of them. So thanks very much, Roberta, and let's move to the next speaker, Marco Grazzi. Marco, you are very well known to ETSA because you are in the board of Assosistema, so another very important national association that is working on this specific sector very much. And so you are bringing today a little bit of the Italian overview after hearing what's happening in the UK. We change a little bit perspective, but I don't think so much, because I think you gather very similar feedback also from the Italian sector. And Marco, you are also sales and marketing manager at Linea Sterile in Italy, so you have also hands-on understanding of this sector for quite a while already. So I'll stop talking and let you the floor, Marco. Give us a little bit of an understanding of what's happening in Italy. I know there is some good law that you will also decree, at least, that you will also flag, that for this sector is quite of a precedent and important. But I'll let you the floor to give us first an overview, and then we can dive into the legislation as well.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, so thank you for the invitation to Elena and to CHAINGE. As Elena said, I'm here with a double hat. So for me, it's important because the winter is coming, and as you can see from the webcam, I need to protect my head at least. I'm actually representing Linea Sterile, that is a small and medium enterprise that has been operating in textile services for over 30 years. But I'm also here as a member of the board of Assosistema, that is, as Elena said, the National Association for Textile Services Company. Next slide, please. So let's see how was the situation in our country before COVID. Generally speaking, there was a strong financial pressure over the national healthcare system, and the mantra was to reduce cost at any cost. So reusable textile was considered too much expensive compared with the disposable, but the need of protection was still there. So the system started a slow but continuous transition toward disposable items. And very soon, a reusable item became a niche with a strong price pressure and the consequent margin reduction for the company like Linea Sterile. Nobody paid attention at that time to the consequence in terms of waste production, massive import of items from Asia, and local economy depletion. The imperative was before COVID to save money and stop. Linea Sterile progressively reduced the number of textile sterilized, starting literally to fill our warehouse with unused items. Next slide, please. Then COVID explodes, and the need of protection for patients and healthcare workers increased exponentially. So the demand for personal protective equipment was huge, and the healthcare system soon faced a disposable product shortage and an exponential price increase. So there was the concrete, believe me, the concrete risk to expose healthcare workers to and patients to infection. Because very often disposable items orders remained unfulfilled and or blocked by the national authority for superior reason, and so or simply for custom controls. So at that point, reusable textile literally came to the rescue. We were pleased to recover the gowns accumulated for years in our warehouse to preserve the daily activity during COVID emergency. The consequence, undoubtedly, has been not only being perceived as a saviors, literally, but also a drastic waste reduction and a direct impact on local employment, because as a laundry, we increase the numbers of items to be processed, so we need more workers on our plants. Next slide, please. So I'm here with some numbers to better explain what I'm talking about. Linea Sterile is a relatively small company with 130 employees, and we cover defined territory with a radius of nearly 150 kilometers from a plant. The numbers so must be considered as a part of we can achieve as a country. As you can see, the numbers of protective gowns pre and post-COVID are impressive, and the trend continue to be positive because the need for healthcare workers' protection is still in place despite the emergency is gone. Next slide, please. The situation that was for non-sterile, no, previous one, okay. That was for the non-sterile gown. For the sterile gowns has been the same, because once surgeon shifted from disposable to reusable, it's very hard for them to come back because they feel the performance of the textile that is superior in terms of protection, breathability, comfort, and durability. So and then also for the buyers, because of the supply chain that is very simple in that way, is something they have to forget, because it's a service and not a buy, use, and throw away process. It's a different scenario. Basically, we can say, as you saw from the slide, that we only with gowns, without talking about drapes and trays, we contribute to save nearly 100 tons of items, okay, to be delivered to incineration plants, and it is a huge amount if you consider that we cover a very small territory. Go ahead, please. Next slide. Now, what's happening? So the healthcare workers, because of COVID emergency, has been forced to wear reusable textile, and now they perceive the positive impact in terms of daily activity and in terms of climate impact. It's very hard to switch them to disposable one. General cost of waste collection is generally increasing, and to some extent also the price for disposable items are increasing. So the public opinion starts to become more conscious about and sensitive about these arguments. Unfortunately, despite that, some public institutions still arrange big tenders for disposable gowns, drapes. The example is my region, Emilia-Romagna, a region that is also, and this is funny, is also considered a pioneer in green public procurement. is running a tender for more than 2 million of items in disposable items, drape, gowns, trays, declaring that the minimum environmental criteria, and I'm going to explain you what I'm talking about, are not applicable. Or you see hospitals that arrange tenders asking to the offerant to offer reusable or disposable, but applying rules that can be applied only for disposable. For example, expiration data for the gowns over 4 years. That is something that is we can't do with the reusable textile. Next slide. So basically, there is a lot of confusion here. The situation in Italy is that the surgical market actually is nearly 80 million of euro, is nearly 10% of the whole textile healthcare market. And we can affirm that basically all the territory is covered by a sterilization unit or by plants able to deliver surgical sterile sets. Next slide, please. Assosistema continue to lobby with government authorities and is providing education and meeting opportunities where messages on reusable textile are delivered and reinforced. We are involving and informing government representatives, regional authorities, buyers, healthcare workers. We are talking. And next slide, please. At the end of 2010, we finally saw the result of our activity with the publication of the decree that is called Minimum Environmental Criteria Decree that became law in May 2021. Basically, from that point, all public administration must comply with specific requirements when purchasing textile or textile services, or suppliers must satisfy mandatory and rewarding criteria to join tenders, at least public tenders. Criteria related to factories, related to textile, related to chemicals used in the laundry, and also to service projects. Next slide, please. Certifications related to environmental and textile biocontamination are now mandatory. Other certification, you see, climate footprint, waterproof footprint, carbon footprint are rewarding in the sense that the more you have, the more your offer can be evaluated at the end of the process. Next slide, please. That is another step ahead. In June 2021, another decree from Minister of Ecological Transition stated that from then, all the gown classified as a medical device or personal protective equipment must be reusable textile. And if you need to use a disposable gown, you need to justify why and when. And this is very important. This is sort of revolutionary. And I can tell you that our friends from medical device are now a bit nervous because they see that there is something that is changing from a legislative point of view. Next slide, please. So surgical and reusable textile are a business opportunity. Can we push strong on sustainability? Do we have data, evidence to support our claims? And do we think that is a hot topic right now? I think that the answer is yes, 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 and yes. Next slide. Unfortunately, we do have roadblocks. Minimal environmental criteria are not applied everywhere. disposable items, drape, gowns, and trays are still considered really cheap. There are habits still in place. The time pressure over the surgeries is something that creates a sort of environment where disposable is better. We can go fast. You know, at the end of the surgery, you can throw away everything. As someone said before, you know, disposable companies are doing a very, very big investment, and they move the opinion of the healthcare workers, especially doctors, surgeons, but also nurses. And public buyers are now still organized as a silos in the sense that they do not communicate their priorities. You have the pharmacy director that buys medical device, and he is responsible for medical device, and he has a budget for medical device. Then you have a waste management director. He is responsible for waste management. And then you have the hospital service director that normally, you know, manages the laundry. There are three different directors with three different priorities, and they don't talk each other. Basically, they don't care. Next slide. Despite all these roadblocks, I think that it's time to hit the iron because it's hot, and it's time to push the reusable transition with hospital at any stage. That's all, folks.
Thank you very much, Marco. It was a very, very interesting presentation. I also loved the last part, time to hit the iron. I hope our British friends on the other side will understand the Italian and also our German friends. The Italian meaning with this, but it is important what you are saying, Marco, right now. And what we found also that once you had this decree, this important decree in Italy, a lot of other countries also wondered, can we do something similar? What can we do to really have a similar effect on the legislation of our country as well, because it's not so easy, it seems. So you are giving a very good example, and I know you have already shared with some of ETSA members how you reached this important goal. But if I was asking you, okay, this is a very high level goal, but on a daily basis, if you are going to talk to the hospitals as a company, or you have to convince them that we are better than disposable, do you have any interesting technique from Rimini that you can advise us? Because that's a tough job also on a daily basis for small and medium enterprises and even for larger companies. How can we be convincing on that? What is your view, Marco?
I think that there is no one answer, because you basically in each and every hospital, in each and every territory, you have to approach your customer and trying to understand who can move the direction and who can follow you in the message that you try to bring, you know, the situation. It can be a nurse, it can be the eco manager of the hospital, it can be the the buyer, it can be the waste director. There is no one solution, but you need to stay on the field, you need to stay close to the customer, you need to talk, you need to promote, and also, and you know, I'm a bit sad for that. If we are laundries and if we have a mission, and the mission is to drive the transition, we do not have to confuse the customer. What I mean is that I know that there are laundry that for business reason, Monday sells reusable textile and Tuesday can sell a disposable textile, just because the customer asks for that. This is only a personal opinion. I'm not saying that, you know, all the companies think the same. I think that we must be consistent with our message. We cannot say, okay, if you don't want the reusable, I can sell you this disposable one, because this creates confusion and totally break our message and our power. But this is from the field. From the above, I think that continue to talk with the government, public authorities is something that the National Association locally should do. And standards are also important. And if I just add something, talking about standards, I've heard that we, with the surgical drapes, we start to become medical device manufacturers. What I want to tell you is that in Italy, what we are saying is that medical device regulation is too much complicated to work as manufacturers. So we are trying to work as assemblers. So we buy drapes and gowns that are already CE mark certified, and we put them together. And so we are assemblers, and the rules for being considered assemblers are much more easy. Let me say easy on the market. As a manufacturer, it's very, very complicated. I don't know in the other country how Elis or other companies are doing or how they are approaching the medical device regulation, but we are working in that direction.
Thank you, Marco. I saw that Miguel was nodding when you were speaking. Miguel, do you see the same way that Marco is saying? Is it better to be assemblers than basing our sector on the medical device regulation? Do you agree with this?
Basically they are assemblers, because they put different things together, manipulate it, sterilize it, and deliver it to the hospitals. In this sense, they are not medical device producers itself, but assembler. Correct. Yeah, and this then applies then to different part of the NDR.
Thank you very much. We also heard in Brussels that there might be a revision of this regulation. We will keep you posted, of course. For the moment, it's nothing set in stone yet. But I look at the floor to see if there is any other question for our speakers. I don't. Yeah, we have Owen. Owen, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Owen.
Perfetto. Thank you, Elena. This is going back to the comment I already put in the chat. So I think this event is brilliant. It's bringing people's attention. It's reminding us as a community and as a sector that we actually do have a case, an argument, and that we actually have strengths, platforms. I think today we've actually underplayed our strengths. That's not a criticism. That's something to look forward next. So I don't think we've seen evidence that across Europe we're planning for success, although I know that's part of Miguel's ambition with change. So that's in strategic terms. That's acknowledging that we already have the technical stack, and it's been in place for 20 years. That's acknowledging with the political and economic drivers that the worm has turned, that they are all in our favor. And I think we can have some faith that they'll continually be in our favor 1 year, 3 years, 5 years. So that global driver can be with us for quite a long time. So I think that that's something that we should be looking at as a sector. What are the key success factors? Where do we stand in relation to them? And how, as a sector, and then as individual companies, how can we plan for success? And I know Miguel's already thinking along those lines. I just thought it was worth emphasizing here. But of course, there's an invitation in there if Miguel or Sven or Roberta or Marco wish to speak to that point.
Guys, would you like to comment to this launch on key factors, key success? I think Owen is trying to say we need to plan and build on this key success now. Do you think we are in a position to do so? And if so, why or why not? And then I will pass to Lorenzo Piludubi. I saw you, Lorenzo. I'm not forgetting about you, okay?
Don't worry. Thank you.
So guys, you want to react to Owen?
I can only not only approve his message, but echo his thoughts on that. You as an industry should start thinking about how to sell these advantages. You have, I mean, we have all these metaphors today, but you have all the cards in your hands. You hold all the cards in your hands, and the matter is if you play them right or not. But future looks pretty reusable for many reasons. Sure,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Thank you, Sven.
Yeah,
Miguel.
I agree with Owen and with Sven. I think the momentum we have now due to the pandemic, due to the whole Green Deal situation, we never had the last 20 years. So it's a unique situation which we have to take the advantage out of it. And this was also a little bit the reason why Elena and I had this idea to do this webinar as a starting point, yeah. But because if we want to be successful, we have to act as one industry, yeah, like the others work like in one industry. So, and we are small and mid-sized companies, which we have to bring all this now together to get strength and to speak with one voice.
Thank you, Miguel. Marco and Roberta, do you need to comment? Do you want to comment further?
Yeah. Roberta, please go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, I can only echo what has been said. We've now got in place, it's the right time, it's the right environment, and we've got products that have been qualitative and quantitative approved. I mean, they meet all the standards. Otherwise, these are medical devices. People should never underestimate the fact that, you know, reusable textile are in circulation because are medical devices, because they meet all the regulation that have to be in circulation. So disposable counter arguments that they're better, that they are easier, breathability, but it's absolutely myths to be debunked. And I think, as I said before in my presentation, if there's anything good has come out of the pandemic, is actually the desire to be a bit more sustainable. When we saw that whatever was important in the UK was not fit for purpose, when we saw that we were actually exposing life, what is best to look in-house, inward, and say, okay, we've got a project in place, we've got a platform that we can use, why we don't use it? And I think this is the right time now.
Thank you, Roberta. Marco, last word, and then I pass to Lorenzo.
Yeah, now just to be brief, last week I was talking with Monlike sales representative that he wanted to convince me that the future is disposable. And I asked him, okay, why you are driving a hybrid car? How you can say that the future is disposable? Do you live in this planet or do you live, you know, in another planet? Oh no, but this is not the right argumentation and so on. No, the moment is our right now, not for the disposable companies. They are bigger than us. They are definitely bigger than us. They can push a lot. You know, I'm alone in a territory of 150 kilometers. They are probably 2 or 3 people, the specialist, the sales rep, the agent, and so on. We need to stay away from the discussion, and we need to play our roles inside the offices where the decision has been, you know, in place.
Thank you, guys. It was very interesting to hear about your willingness to fight now in the forthcoming year, especially with perhaps some coordinated political action between all of us in this direction. Of course, I am the horrible person to remind you that in order to fight against the disposable, there is the need also of a lot of investment, and I'm talking about funding. So making this available from national association, European association, because it's true, they have marketing tools that are quite significant. So it would be silly not to recognize this aspect. But let me move to Lorenzo Piludu. Lorenzo, introduce also yourself and your company for the rest. You are mute. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So one second here. Yes, I'm Lorenzo Piludo of the company Creazioni Future. So we're garment makers. So the question is specific for Marco, for the Italian market, but I mean, of course, for the European market, because now we're speaking about the Italian decree, the new rules that for sure can also be exported, we hope, in Europe to expand. But the question is, Marco told us, and I know about this tender in Emilia-Romagna, so which is the feeling, because if we will move in the direction that reusable will be our challenge, but if single-use company will start, will be a disaster, not only for Italian market, but also for Europe, because it means that the new rules can be put out, which is the situation. Thank you.
This is not something that a single company can approach. This is something that the National Association should approach with the region and with the hospital administration, because otherwise it seems that it's only your interest. That it is true, but it is the National Association. But Assosistema is working on that. Assosistema is working on the, at a regional level, at a national level, to try to avoid those situations. It's not easy, and I think that is not easy because the public buyers they don't understand the difference. And as I said before, when they run a tender and they say, okay, it's okay, you can offer me a disposable gown or a reusable gown, and I'm going to evaluate you on the expiry date. So it's quite obvious that a reusable textile is 3 months or 6 months or 1 year, and the disposable one is 5 years. So it's like to say, okay, I bring you on the same market, but the disposable team is 11 players, and the reusable team is 3 players, 4 players. So the match is always is done. Okay, so we need to train, inform, and teach them that if they want to put both solution on the same level, they have to find out a common ground of evaluation. Otherwise.
Thank you, Marco. I think that today we looked into all very different perspectives, from standardization to really different countries, UK, Italy, and how a bit the topic is approached by large companies, small and medium enterprises. I think we have quite a lot on the pot, but also quite a lot of good key successful factors that I believe, and I agree with Owen, we should really push on for the future. And Miguel, I think that today we heard quite a lot of interesting information that could guide a little bit how we want to move the agenda forward for 2023 altogether, because we have key experts here that spoke, but that have important contacts and actions taking place at national level. So I thank you very much, all of you, for your time today, and also to the people that attended the webinar. Our friends and colleagues from the United States and specifically from TRSA could not be with us today because it's Thanksgiving and they are celebrating, but they asked me, please record this because it's an important sector also for us. So it would be important also to look into what the US is doing in these directions, exchange, see where they are doing better than us, or whether we can improve aspects of our marketing, of our strategy, our lobbying, and so on. So I hope you found the webinar interesting. I thank my colleague also in the background, Nicolas Anelli, and thank you very much to all for being with us. You know, you can contact ETSA Secretariat if you have any extra questions about CHAINGE or about anything that the speakers have said. We will circulate the presentation. So thanks a lot and see you hopefully very soon in 2023. Bye.
Thanks for being here. Bye.
Thank
Ciao.
you very much. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you all very
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay.